So firstly, thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon and through other means as well, who buys my books and such, and even just watching the videos. It helps immensely. Firstly, before we get into the video, I do have books for sale. I have a new book that's being sent away for formatting. This one will deal more in depth, I think, in terms of providing a background to the topic that we're going to tackle here. And it's the various agendas, that be it Agenda 2050, Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, all of these various, even the Great Reset, of course, the WF and their stated goals, all of it provides a web, a framework for bringing in a global dominion, essentially. And the new book that I am about to publish will provide the metaphysical, I guess. Yeah, I guess that would be the correct word to use. Provide the metaphysical reason to all of these various international agendas that we see. So yes, you can, to support me, you can buy my books through Lulu. The first book, Rise and Fall, that was the only one I could globally distribute. That can be bought from essentially everywhere. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, again Lulu as well, but most of the books that I sell are through Lulu. So if you want to buy them there, again, it helps me just tick along. And I do, even when I'm not uploading videos, at least regularly, and by that I mean once every week, I'm writing incessantly and I'm researching. I do it constantly, every day. I have work, I have other commitments, but this is one of the mainstay commitments, and I'm looking into multiple topics on any given day, and writing bits here and there. I have about 3 or 4 books on the go right now, so that's what's slowed up some of the videos. But for myself to understand the greater conspiracy at play, if you will, I have to do the research. I have to crystallize the picture of it, the tapestry of the conspiracy within my mind, to thus speak upon it with any confidence. So the research and the books are very much integral to what I do. So if you support that, you can donate essentially to me. I will still create these videos, produce the books, do everything I can to circulate information and research and provide my findings to people, mostly for free. So you don't have to donate, you don't have to support me on Patreon or anything like that. It's totally optional. And of course, I'm indebted to you if you do, and I thank you very much. It assists me a lot, just covering the costs as well for the videos, in terms of the stock footage, the stock music, and of course all of the time that goes into the research and the editing of the videos too. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Agenda 2030. So Agenda 2030, like all of the various agendas that they are involved in, is done under the guise of philanthropy. And it's like that old adage, whoever invokes humanitarianism is out to swindle or cheat. And what we see with Agenda 2030, again, like all of the internationalist agendas, is the next logical step in the managerialist revolution. In the managerialist revolution, if you're unfamiliar with the book, written in the 1940s, it theorised, it was written by James Burnham, I believe an ex-Trotskyist, and he theorised that we don't live in a capitalist world. Capitalism had virtually lost control by at least the outset. Well, he was writing from the outset of World War II. So by the end of World War I, capitalism was waning. that system, and that the managerialist revolution had begun. It was totally finalised by the end of World War II, and we've been moving in that direction, being eclipsed by this rule by a manager class ever since. Of course, there's a vast agenda at play here that goes even beyond this mere facile explanation of it, but it's just merely to visualise it within one's mind. What are all these agendas? What is this internationalist framework all about? Well, this is the mindset that will underpin the world dominion that is sought by these managerialists, if you will. So the managerialist class are essentially administrators. They rule through administration, through micro and macro management, through bureaucratic means. And this is essentially a merging of business and government into this managerialist bulwark. Another name for it is technocracy. And what we're seeing with Agenda 2030, for example, is the globalization of that managerialist revolution, the final fruition of it into this sort of despotic or hidden despotic control. So Agenda 2030 is broken down into a multiplicity of goals, and each of those goals are subdivided down into, again, a multiplicity of sub-goals, and so on and so forth. It's much like every other agenda. It's the same framework. It's built around the Great Reset is a prime example of that. It has the same planning framework, if you will. So the Agenda 2030 is the global goals for sustainable development. What is sustainable development? Well, sustainability, again, this ties into how a manager would look at a corporation, at a business, at a commercial enterprise. And this idea of the incorporation of countries, beginning in the late 19th century, though somewhere in the mid-19th century, this idea that the nation states no longer really exists, that these various countries and, of course, supranational organisations such as the European Union are mere facades, of course, but they're incorporated, they are corporations, and we are all their employees. So this idea of sustainable development, though it has humanitarian connotations, again, to disguise its true nefarious intent, it is based around this idea that the world, and of course the feudal enterprises of these, countries, they are corporations, they are to be viewed as such, and they are viewed as such by the managerialist class, right? So this idea of sustainable development, it is developing the world, maintaining this of course capitalist and managerialist idea of infinite growth into the future ad infinitum, right? And the sustainability part doesn't really relate to the sustainability as it concerns the environment and protecting the environment. No, that is a mere disguise, a front. It is concerned with the sustaining of the position and the power of the managerialist class, right? Again, like cybernetics, from the Greek kybernetikos, it means to steer, right? The world, in their view, is chaos. They are the managers who manage that chaos, who steer it, right? Who steer it to, or steer it in a trajectory that is beneficial to them. So going through this, let's just go through all of the various goals, and I'll just pick out a few and I will go into really what is the truth surrounding these rather, again, humanitarian, but euphemistically vague goals, right? So the first goal is no poverty. Again, all of these various goals are inarguable premises, which tells you right away that there's something afoul here. Goal 1, no poverty. Goal 2, zero hunger. Goal 3, good health. Goal 4, quality education. Goal 5, gender equality. Goal 6, clean water and sanitation. Goal 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Goal 10, reduced inequalities. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. That's a very important one. Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. Goal 13, climate action. Goal 14, life below water. Goal 15, life on land. Goal 16, peace and justice. Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. Well, let's take a look at Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities, right? And it's quite interesting because that is one that is almost a linchpin for the rest of them. And it has to do with this idea regarding the 15-minute cities and this Hunger Game-like restructuring of the urban environment. And what it's, again, based upon the foundation of digital technology and biodigital technology. This idea of artificial sense organs, as the cyberneticists spoke of in the 1940s. Norbert Wiener, for example, the father of cybernetics, viewing, again, like the managerialists do, they view society as like an electric circuit. Their goal is to create an electric circuit that is perpetual. It is a negative feedback loop. With minimal input, can they maintain the self-regulation of it? So this idea of sustainable cities and communities is in essence the megacities divided into 15-minute zones. And we'll go through this, and this is from the UK government. So Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. The UK government is working hard to support growth in some of the poorest countries through promoting urban development that is resilient and sustainable, and ensure that public transport is accessible to all and increase housing supply. Now again, that shows you that the UK government is now incorporated, not just as an incorporation, not just as a corporation rather, but is incorporated into this global agenda, because the UK government, whose only traditional mandate, whose only mandate itself is to work hard, not for other poor countries or other countries, but to work hard for the people of the UK, right? That should be the entirety of their mandate. That is the entirety of their remit. But that's not the case. With this international agenda, now the UK government becomes but a feudal overlord, a vassal state of this larger, embryonic world dominion. And it's attempting to sort of enhance or speed up the birth of this world dominion. So around the world, sustainable urbanization. We are supporting urbanization that is resilient, sustainable and drives economic development. We are promoting awareness with partner governments of the role of urban development in contributing to national growth and development. What they mean by that is imposing the framework of 15-minute cities and the framework of the Internet of All Things, or the nascent framework of it. The Internet of All Things surrounds biodigital technology, that everyone shall be biodigitally, eventually, merged with a grid, an internet of all things. This will be done through hijacking, in essence, the bioelectrical system that is your body through some form of EMF, probably, right? Some frequency technology. I believe they call it psychotronics, and they have been developing this since the 1940s, and it's been geared towards, in terms of its trajectory of development, towards the regimentation of human society. This is what this resilient and sustainable urban development means. So again, putting everyone onto the grid, keeping you locked into these 15-minute zones where wherein through this ghettoization, you will not be allowed to have long-distance relationships outside of your zones. Therefore, these zones will become self-contained dysgenic pods, in essence, or dysgenic ghettos. Inbreeding will be rife. There will be infighting. Of course, they will be quote-quote diverse, which will enhance the infighting. And you will be literally dividing society along a plethora of lines, these invisible zones. And through this ghettoization, will you again make far more tangible the divide and conquer strategy, right? That works so well to control not only the world, but the domestic societies. That's the government, the vassal or feudal government control on behalf of the larger suzerain lord of the global dominion, be it the UN or what have you. We are committed to supporting growth in cities across sub-Saharan and southern Africa and South Asia, and in particular in emerging intermediate towns and cities. We will do this by supporting improved finance, investing in infrastructure, creating jobs for the urban poor, and promoting climate-smart urban planning and design. There you go. Promoting climate-smart urban planning and design. That is the operative point that they wish to include there. That is what it is all about. Climate-smart urban planning and design, which essentially is word salad for a Hunger Games-like society, Hunger Games-like urban environment, and of course this idea of the urbanization of the rural areas, because the rural areas are outcrops, they're outposts rather, of a non-cosmopolitan, a non-urban culture. It's as long as the rural areas survive, and we see this throughout every despot that has attempted this through history, of course lacking the technology that these despots believe that they have now to correct the potential failings of their dreamed of despotism, is that the urban environment always seemed like a heterotopia, a sort of nightmarish microcosm that the rural folk that acted as a contrasting utopia or paradise too. So you had the largely increasingly despotic urban environment through typically late imperial stage development, where everything is becoming bizarre, like what we're seeing nowadays, and everything is becoming inverted, like a Saturnia Regna, a kingdom of Saturn, like some perpetual Saturnalia, right? And in contrast to that, you have the traditionalism that's still there, inherent within the rural outcrops, the rural outposts of the society. It still keeps an ember of the culture alive. And people in the urban centres, as things become increasingly hopeless and, hopelessly bizarre, they look to those rural outposts rather, and become nostalgic for a time that they'd never lived in, or as a sort of bastion of what the world should be, of what their nation should be. And eventually, after some time and other factors, I guess it provides a springboard for potential rebellion against the managerialist class, right? Or the despotic class, the despot, throughout whatever era of history it may be. So again, they have to colonise the rural areas, right? They have to colonise those. That is done through mass urbanisation. That is why in, for example, the UK, they're building so many houses. They're literally, at the same time, when they're speaking about, protecting the rural areas, protecting the environment, all of this, they are incessantly building houses and in essence urbanising every bit of potential green space, creating a dense, they're turning Britain into a densely populated mega city, essentially. That's what they desire. We have set up the infrastructure in cities for economic development. Iced. Again, this is what this is about. The infrastructure in cities for economic development. Again, that's a euphemism. It's meant to be a nebulous, it's meant to be nebulous phraseology, rather. What it means is it's that idea of the nascent, biodigital system that will eventually develop into the Internet of all things, where everything shall be inventorized. You shall have a big data society, and you will have AI governance. And the society, with minimal resource input, will be maintained in a negative feedback loop, right? Self-regulating. They will know everything about you. The AI algorithm will eventually know you better than you know yourself. They'll have worked out all of the kinks in the human spirit, right? Everything that could be potentially unpredictable will be made predictable. That is their goal. Of course, I think it's impossible. Personally, myself, if this comes into being, I'm more worried about what it will, the havoc it will wreak upon not just the society and the nation, but the world in general and the species. Because tied up with this is a planned hard reset, a great reset, right? Because to bring in this system, we'll get into it, but essentially they have to induce a genetic bottleneck. That's another desire for them, this idea of sustainable development. To work out the kinks, the unpredictable elements within the human being. It would be best, and they mention this about genetic hacking, to begin again in a great reset with a small population, a sort of control group. From there, they can establish the artificial wombs, the batteries, the facilities for artificial wombs. I believe each unit of this, or each facility of these batteries of artificial wombs, can create about 30,000 synthetic humans per year. That, of course, was the reason you had all the years and decades leading up to the event in 2020. You had largely Israeli-based companies like Ancestry.com and all of the various derivatives derivative companies of that primary company, stating that they could provide you, genealogical data and your ancestry if you merely donated them your DNA. Of course, that was all a mere ruse. All they desired was your DNA. And the reason they desired that DNA, it's so when this artificial genetic bottleneck comes about, that they will have enough genetic materials stored to ensure that the species, this synthetic species going forward from this smaller control group, again post-dating the artificial genetic bottleneck or planned cull, will be genetically viable going forward. Again, they'll have enough genetic material for, or enough genetic variation there to ensure the continuance and control the tailoring of the species going forward. Again, it's exactly what a rancher, a farmer would do in terms of selective breeding, but this is far more direct. It's it's far more technical and specific, and ironing out the kinks within the unpredictable nature of the human spirit. Of course, this is tied up as well with the gender nonconformist ideology that they seem to be pushing, and of course the destruction of the definition of even a woman, now being termed a non-man. And the reason for this is due to the fact that the end goal of feminism was the abolishment of women, and the reason the female of the species must be tightly regulated, if not just wholly abolished, is because, in line with the state's mentality in regards to the managerialist revolution, the female denies the state the access to the monopoly over life. They already have a monopoly over death, but they want a monopoly over life, where they become the parent of all children going forward. And of course, once they kind of abolish the female through planned and perhaps imposed through synthetic means, hermaphroditism, where the species shall become hermaphroditic, essentially a sort of effeminate male, that type of hermaphroditism. They will be able to become, again, as I've stated, the parents of all children going forward, but to fully realise and implement this synthetic species through the facilities of artificial wombs. This is what underpins the Age of Reason. It's what underpins this Agenda 2030. All of these various goals. Everything I'm mentioning here, every goal pertains to this. Every goal. If you look at all of the various logical conclusions of those goals, the long-term outcomes, if they were followed to the letter, where the continuum would reach, and the common destination for them all, again, if all of them are continued in terms of their logical conclusions, their logical outcomes are pursued, it will produce exactly what I'm stating to you. And this is tied up with eugenics. Eugenics is the control of human evolution. That, of course, links to what we see regarding the 15-minute cities and what have you. I largely expect, as we see throughout the 20th century, and their various plans which were hidden within fiction, for example, H.G. Wells' work, Orwell's work, Of course, Aldous Huxley, the Huxleys, their work. They hide it in sci-fi like they hid it in centuries past in dialogues, because they damn well know that this information, these plans, are very much antithetical to the interests of the majority of the human species. Thus, they must hide it. They must familiarise the target with the plan going forward, as to not shock them when it comes to pass. This is social priming or predictive programming. It's also connected. It's connected with psychological manipulation, and really psychological manipulation is based around manipulating the target, not through direct means, but through the means in which you supplant the target's interests with your own, right? So you make the target believe that your interests are not necessarily antithetical to him, but are absolutely beneficial to him, right? Again, this is what this Agenda 2030 is. It's the euphemistic language. Well, how could you be against sustainable cities and communities? For example, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. How that's inarguable, alright? But when you delve beyond the mere platitudes and rhetoric, and you begin to penetrate the perfidiousness of it all, then you see what this is all about. And it's not a system for human empowerment. It's a system for human enslavement, not just temporarily, but for all time, if it's fully implemented. So, for example, ICE, or Infrastructure and Cities for Economic Development, it will also focus on generating critical knowledge and evidence on the best approaches to support an inclusive, again, inclusive is just a totally vague term, and sustainable urban development. It is a vague term, yes, but inclusive, really what that means is involuntary. So sustainability means the sustainability of power, but inclusivity means that no one is left behind, right? And again, that's a better way of framing it in a rhetorical manner than saying involuntary. You won't have a choice. It's this idea of the all-encroaching, encompassing, devouring city, the urban environment, the artificial polis. It devours everything. It seeks to devour everything, to bring it into its orbit, right? Of course, namely the rural environment. It sees it as total competition. So again, they're bringing up African cities. Why? Why African? Why Southern African? Sub-Saharan African? In essence, this points to the new servile class. The majority of the, I guess you would call it, the civilized peoples, be them East Asians or Europeans or what have you, they are no longer required, right? They're far too much of a threat. They're they're competition to the system that is required, and the system that is required by these managerialists. Of course, this all goes back to Kabbalah and all of this, which my new book will detail. The reason they desire this sort of eradication, if you will, this neutralization of the erstwhile civilized classes or peoples or races, is because The system that they want is one where inequality shall be at its heart, and that's what shall maintain the distinction between the ruled and the rulers. So they want a system that's holarchic, where they are in the centre, the concentric ring, beyond the inner sanctum, the inner circle, the centre themselves shall be the service classes, the server classes. The first one shall be the enforcer class, and beyond that shall be the servers and the technical classes, which shall maintain and repair the cities and their pleasurable lifestyle, all of the machines and mechanisms that go towards the pleasurable lifestyle and maintaining that for the elite. It's very similar to Plato's Callipolis within the Republic, or Thomas More's Utopia within Calon, or even Tommaso Campanella's City of the Sun, right? These ideas. Brave New World, yes, it's similar to that in its simplistic social hierarchy, but I think it will be even far more simplistic than that in terms of the number of classes. I think there shall be only 3 classes when it really is boiled down. When you really view this future envisioned system, it will be the elites, or as Plato calls them, the philosopher kings, those who have the right to rule, right? Who can rule, who care about decision making, who can make proper decisions, who care about the welfare of the species, and again, this is how they view themselves, and who can make the difficult decisions, unburdened by moral principles. So, and after that class will be the enforcers, and after that class will be the server class, the direct servers, the maids, the butlers, the chefs, and of course the technician class, which keep it all running. And you will have, for a time being, you will have menial or manual labour also included in that class. But I believe they will look to fully automate the exploitation of resources, natural resources, extracting them, processing them. All of that will be pursued in terms of innovating towards full automation. Again, to do away with what Harari calls the useless class, right? So that's why they're focusing on African or sub-Saharan African, southern African cities and countries. Public transport. So this push towards ensuring that people use solely public transport, so they know where you're going, they can control your travel. Housing, ensuring that all houses are standardised. We're beginning to see that within the UK. Furthermore as well, ensuring mass urban sprawl, and eventually everyone will be given a social housing under specific conditions. Again, after the planned kill, this and that will be gradual. That won't be instantaneous. It's a gradual process leading up to 2030 and be even beyond that. The housing will be tied up or it will be divvied out, designated based upon one's class. Again, as I've mentioned, I think it will be a simplistic class structure. It mentions air quality. Air pollution can have a significant impact on human health. Tackling air pollution is a priority, and quote, 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 legally binding UK targets to reduce emissions of key air pollutants. This move towards EVs to price the coming servile class, the lower echelons, out of driving cars, again, out of keeping them confined to their modes of travel, their minimal modes of travel, namely public transport, and ensuring that, again, emissions of key air pollutants are dropped. Those key air pollutants just so happen to be, used within house and appliances, used within manufacturing positions and what have you, used within manufacturing operations, and of course used within the daily necessities of life. So all of this can come under the purview of the managerialists, based upon this impending crisis, this emergency that's perpetual, ever ongoing. It provides them a great pretext for that, for controlling the individual's life down to, to micromanage it, really. So responsible consumption and production. Another one is a good health. That's based around this idea of pharmacological agents, access to therapeutics, if you catch my drift, the needlecraft, essentially, and that everyone has to be needlecrafted, and so on and so forth. We have the disability employment gap, that there shall be no poverty, again, trying to force the disabled, and if they can't force them into work, like what we saw through the event of 2020 and the needlecrafting, they went for the, like what we see in most despotic regimes, they go for the disabled first, right? But they were doing it under the guise of, we're trying to protect the most vulnerable classes first, right? So the vulnerable get access to the needlecraft first. Again, this was due to the fact that they want the disabled gone, right? They have this. They're a sort of crypto-genocidalist despotism that we have in power. Security and retirement. So choice and dignity in retirement with a safe and sustainable state pension, right? Keep saying safe and sustainable. What they mean by that is the safety to the government, to the power broker, the potentates, the captains of the corporations and power and the establishment, and sustainable to the establishment. And like we've already mentioned, the entire country is a corporation. And what do corporations do when their citizens, or rather employees, who were once assets to the corporation, who were productive assets, become manifestly, demonstrably unproductive assets, or namely liabilities? That is right, they liquidate it. They liquidate that once asset, now turned liability. Cold, calculating efficiency. That is what underpins the managerialist mindset. And of course, if you are totally dependent on the government for for example, winter fuel payments, because, for instance, Russia is not providing us enough energy, therefore it ensures that the energy companies can artificially raise prices, right, under that pretext, which of course is most likely entirely false, but again, it provides them the justification to do so. It prices people out of the market and makes them dependent on the government. So as we see here, it states, we are providing people greater security. Who is we? Because as we've read previously, the UK government are involved, it seems, across the board internationally, not just domestically. Thus, we seems to imply the coming or nascent global dominion. Well-earned private pension along with benefits that include winter fuel payments, again, which the retiree will be dependent upon because the energy costs will be so high. Free bus passes, again, they will be dependent upon that because only public transport will be feasible for the lower echelons. Free prescriptions and TV licenses, right? Free prescriptions, right? How does that help you? Well, the way that helps, not you, but the state, is that, from pharmakeia, the etymology of it means poison, right? So they're slowly medicating you, infusing chemicals into your system to spur on the natural process of death, should we say, right? To spur that on, to increase it in terms of its rapidity. And TV licenses, again, to keep you plugged in to the propaganda. And of course, your pension will be so low, your state pension, it will be purely safe and sustainable, not high, not luxurious or abundant, safe and sustainable. It will ensure that you don't have enough money to pay for any other on-demand services, so you will have to go through the state TV broadcaster. We also support increased labour supply and retirement incomes through employer-led initiatives on fuller working lives, ensuring older people do not leave the labour market early through avoidable medical retirement. The inability to balance caring responsibilities with employment and the need to reskill or change occupations. So there you go, right? So they've mentioned, yes, you will have the choice of a state pension. Of course, they will make the state pension so low that you will have to work, including all of the responsibilities of tax that will increase within this global dominion to ensure that you will have to work. You can never retire. And then they get right to the end, because this is what they do. Every single paragraph, they wait to the end. They list what they really want right at the end, and that is, we also support increased labour supply and retirement incomes through employer-led initiatives on fuller working lives. By that, they mean they don't want anyone retiring, right? And they will force you into not retiring. It will be through coercion, right? They'll make it unaffordable to retire. That will be done through, as we're seeing, inflation, contrived austerity, increasing, beyond all reasonable measures, the cost of living, right? That it's increasing, perpetually, but it's increasing exponentially too, right? In many ways, especially after the debasement of the currency, given the event in 2020, post-dating that. Reform and welfare. What it states here is that welfare, the reform and welfare, will be one where They desire a universal basic income, of course, again making you dependent upon the government. But it discusses a universal credit program, right? So moving from, and this is tied into universal credit, and but the universal credit program really is this push, and it will be gradual, because caution is something they err on the side of, where the welfare will not be a receipt of benefits, but it will be a receipt of credit, right? That credit you will pay back through what they state here, the right incentives, right? To ensure work always pays, right? So it supports people to both get a job and then to progress in employment. So what they mean is you'll be given a sort of a loan eventually, right? But you will have to do certain jobs to tick the box to get that universal credit, right? So it won't be free anymore. Welfare won't be a safety net. It will be eventually a way to lock people in to a form of chattel slavery or indentured servitude, really, where they're locked into this credit program where they tick the boxes, they do the desired chores that are given to them by the state, and they are provided with sort of pocket change for that, right? Again, that's what the CBDC system is about, the central bank digital currency. These programmable currencies where you will be geo-fenced, you can't spend outside your zone, right? Once the 15-minute cities come in. You won't be able to save money because it will be a timed credit system. You'll earn the money and then you'll have a month to spend it. So you'll have no upward mobility in this system. And also they'll know exactly what you're spending it upon. They may say that you're spending too much money on, non-carbon efficient products. They may curtail your spending. They may force you into spending on specific items. They may force you. They may just take tax right away out of your monthly allowance. All of these things, of course, as well. They can establish a command and control economy on this basis. They can force you where to work, right? If you don't work, you don't get your universal basic income or your central bank digital currency. You don't get the top up on the universal basic income from your indentured servitude, your daily chores given to you by the government. They may tell you to go here or there, or right, you're reskilling, we need you in this industry now. So your time as, say, a police officer has ended. You're now going to become a welder or something like that, right? If you don't do it, you don't get your universal basic income. You become a pariah, ostracized from society, a non-conformist in many ways. So it mentions all of these other things. Essentially, is about increasing the reliance and the dependence the citizen has on the government and on the various corporations that own the government, again on this managerialist class, and thus ensuring that they can create the foundation, the bedrock, for a system of perpetual enslavement, right? A society, again, like we mentioned, and which is mentioned in that report titled silent weapons for quiet wars. So the managerialist views the system, the society, as an electric circuit. Their desire is to create, to re-envision this circuit, rather, to mold this circuit into a system of negentropy, right? Negating entropy, negating decay. This is perpetual, this is self-regulating, that is what the cyberneticists call autopoietic. This will be done through big data, right? This eventually will be done through the merging of the bio-digital, at that point, bio-digital body and system of the human citizen, the human subject, into the Internet of all things. And this is where the data centers come into being, right? And of course, they have to establish the energy requirements for those data centers. And there will be very much, these data centers will rely on a lot of energy, and it will have to be a constant flow of energy to ensure that data loss is maintained at a minimum, right? So there's no hiccups in the system. So I've been going on for an hour now. I do apologise, quite a long discussion. I haven't really even covered the majority of Agenda 2030, and of course all of these other agendas, as they are all synonymous with one another, interconnected rather, in many ways. But that provides you the general overview of what Agenda 2030 is about, what it seeks to do, what its objectives are. So yes, I hope that was of value to you.